Okay, so today I journaled, and what I wrote in my journal today, and I wrote it in Swedish. So I'm going to translate it in my mind first, and then I'm going to tell you. There isn't anything except the now. It's never been. There's never existed anything except from the now. Life is like always happened here. Here is still stillness. Here is peace. Here is everything. Regardless of the stuff that's happened or will happen, will happen. Life has only existed in this lens. Does that make sense? Life has only existed through what you're experiencing right now, what you're seeing right now when you watch this video. You're seeing it through your eyes, right? That's how you've been experiencing life all the time. Does that make sense? That all the narratives in your head, which is like living in the past or living in the future, has never been the case? Because when you have a narrative in your mind, which is the ego that's building up a scenario or telling you should feel bad about that thing that happened, it's a conditioning that's happening in the now. So what you realize is the now is the only thing that exists. And it's a trippy thought. It's weird in a way. It's like existential in a way, but it's so calm once you realize that it's the only thing that's ever been. There hasn't been a past. There hasn't been a future. There's only this, what you're experiencing right now. When the future comes, it will still be this, what you're experiencing right now, that will be the future, but then that will be the new now. So there will always just be this. When talking about the past or the future, it's this conditioning it's almost like you're asleep. You're not really realizing that, well, it's just, this is what it is. There is no end point in anything. Wishing for an end point is just thinking that the present moment will look different. But it will never look different regardless of what is in your external world. It will never look different than what this is right now, what you're seeing, what you're experiencing. If you're like, in the future, I will find peace because I will achieve that, just take a moment to just hear the birds. This is peace. There's never been an end point. This is the end point. The process of being alive, the process of being present has always been the end point. It's what influences you to make the right decisions. It's what's going to make you the most authentic you. It's what's going to make you create the best music ever. Because you're just, you just is. You just are. You're just in the being. It's almost like, even when I talk to you about this, it almost feels like, wow, I'm so zen, and well, I am very present, and I also feel like every video I make I always make them in a present state. Like I just get so present when I make these videos, and it feels amazing. But it's almost like, you know how the conditioning mind, which is the mind that is tied to identities and to the ego and to the basically narratives, past, future. What's gonna happen? And it's almost like it's been my safe zone because that's what I know. All of a sudden now I get so present that almost my stomach is like, wow, this feels weird in a way. It feels like an existential feeling, like almost like, wow, this is a new awareness that we haven't felt before. And yes, it is a bit scary almost because you've never felt so much in your life. You've never been so alive before. And that's what I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling so alive, and it's amazing. It is amazing. It's funny. It's funny because if I would see this a year ago, I would just look at this video and be like, "What is this guy talking about? He's just full of himself, or he's just smoked weed or something. I don't know." It's a beautiful feeling to be more present. It's it's a very nice state to be in. I don't know what to say except that it's a beautiful state to be in, and if you can live your every second in a present state, I think you would have a better life. Now that's a difficult thing to do. Right now, like my whole day until this video has just been me kind of observing and then realizing, wait, I wasn't present right now, so get back to it. So it's this constant like, get back to the present, get back to the present. And I mean, listening to music becomes so fulfilling. It becomes this other thing. It's like, wow. And when you start observing your mind too, it's like you just see your mind kind of in this way of like, oh, that thought came, and now you can just choose what you do with that information. You can be like, no, I don't want to. I just want to be present. So you just go be present. The conditioning, which basically most people, I mean, we live in a world of conditioning, which means that we're just defined by the thoughts that come in your head. We're defined by that voice inside of your head. We're defining everything through the thoughts that we get in our mind. What we realize is, or what I've realized through watching a lot of Eckhart Tolle and through my own seeking, is there is no external world. There is only the internal world. Everything you experience is your interpretation, if you know what I mean. So everything you see in front of you is an interpretation. You see something, and you're there's happening a lot of things inside your brain that's sending signals, so you get an interpretation. So it's like everything everything just happens inside of this brain. So it's an interpretation. It's an internal world. It's never this external. You might think that, but I can feel this. Well, yeah, it is an interpretation of what it is. So the external is not even what it is. It's happening inside of here, regardless. Because if it wouldn't happen inside of here, then you wouldn't be alive to be able to interpret the feeling of touching something, or knowing that, or knowing whatever it is. So everything is just internal, your internal world. So that means realizing that present moment is the key to everything, to happiness, to never feel anxiety again, to never basically feel, realizing the power of the present moment, and also realizing, since everything is internal, That means learning how to control your thoughts will basically decide what your internal world will be. And if you can decide what your internal world will be, then what you experience in this external, which is just a product of your internal, which we've talked about right now, then everything will change. So if you can change what's in here, you can literally change what's out here. And that's like, yeah, it almost sounds like it's like, oh, but that's just, uh, what's it called? Like spiritual bullshit, spiritual nonsense, or whatever people want to call it. But it's like, think about it. Even if you're like this person that don't believe in anything spiritual, or if your ego is like, but what you're saying right now is just not true, or whatever it may be, just think about this, because this everybody can understand. Isn't it true that what I said, that everything you see is just, you get signals sent to your brain, so you're interpreting it. So basically it all happens in here. So if you, that's what I'm saying. It's all I'm saying. It's no spiritual, it's not spirituality actually. It's just, it is the things you're seeing, there's signals sent to your brain that should interpret what you're seeing as what it is. So what I'm saying is, if you can change how you interpret stuff, then your external will change accordingly. There's nothing else. And yes, it is spiritual, but that's realizing also that, yeah, maybe it is spiritual. Maybe just maybe just not believing in spirituality is like the ultimate ego, the ultimate escape from just, yeah, this all makes sense. It's a funny thought that this all makes sense, because does it really? Can you really feel, can you really think that this makes sense? Does anything make sense really? No. It doesn't make sense, and that's the beauty. What's making sense? We can't even we can't even explain what making sense means, because that's also just a term that we've come up with. Everything is just us trying to make sense. But what is it to make sense of? There is nothing we can explain. Like, how can you, like, people who like writes this off as spiritual nonsense, is like, how can you think? How can you escape from the feeling of like, this doesn't make, like, how can you just think that the man-made concept, the conceptual thinking, how can you just write it off as, it's just conceptual? It's just how the world is, the Big Bang. It's all that. It's this. It's, you can't. It's impossible. It's impossible to put this world inside of a box and tell this is how it is. It just is. This is what it is. Does that make sense? This is what it is. It's this, what you're seeing right now. It is this. It's nothing else. And it's beautiful. It's bliss. It's peace. And it's a little scary, because I haven't made total sense with not making sense. It's like this feeling of trying to make sense, but it's like I realize I'm not going to be able to make sense of it. And the presence is so strong, it's so still, that I'm just not used to it being so still. It's the it's a peaceful feeling. I've always thought that, oh, when I reach that point, you know how you have goals? Oh, I can't wait to reach that goal because then there this peace will come upon me. This feeling of contentment with finally reach. And it's like in the moment you're thinking about another moment that doesn't exist, and you're saying this moment isn't worth anything because this moment is just, I'm not happy in this moment, and therefore I'm just fantasizing about a future moment that will be better. Now, don't you think that if you would surrender to this moment and do this moment as best as you can and really, really be present in this moment, don't you think that the future moment will just automatically become what you want it to become? It's like, well, yeah, of course, because if you can live in every moment as in in it, like in a present state, then of course the future moment will be also in a present state. And it will also be this. It will just always be present. You will always be in the moment. So don't write the current moment off. Don't write it off. Don't write it off as something that you don't want to be in. Because there is no other. There is no other moment. Like, there has never been another moment. Imagine just living in the future. Well, 2 years ago you were living in the where you are now, and now you're living in 2 years forward, and then in 2 years you will live in the next 2 years, and suddenly you're 80 years old, and you're like, good, like that's scary. I promise you, living in the present moment is the ultimate connection to yourself, to your soul. It's the connection to the divine. It's the connection to the like the creation of music and to what you're doing. It's the ultimate. It's the connection to love. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, the amount of love that I've been feeling lately, it's just, this is where love exists. This is the dimension of where love exists. And today I was actually like feeling lack of love for myself because I got into my conditioned thinking. I even wrote about it. I wrote about that. I noticed that I got a conditioned thinking, which was what's it called? That was telling myself that I looked bad. I looked ugly. Didn't look good. And I was like, where did that lack of love come from? It was like I was just observing it. And then what I did, which you can also start doing, if you feel like you don't have that self-love, you feel like you have that voice that tells you're not good enough, try doing this. Find pictures of yourself when you were a small kid. Okay? So go do that. Find the pictures of yourself when you were a small kid. Look at them. And try to tell that kid that he's not good enough. You won't be able to. Because you love that kid. That kid is the most amazing kid in the world. And guess what? That kid lives here. So if you can show that kid love, which was exactly what I did, by the way, I went back, looked at all pictures of myself when I was like 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, looking at him and being like, I love you so much. And then I was like, wow, I don't feel bad about myself. I'm beautiful. It's this self-love that it's rooted. It's much easier to do that than to tell yourself, yeah, I love myself, when it's just this condition like, yeah, self-love. But then you're like, but connect it to your inner child. Do that instead, because that's more, you can't really feel hate towards your inner child. If you look at pictures of yourself, you can't hate. No matter how much you hate yourself, what you did 1 year ago, or how your conditioned patterns have been, no matter how much you hate that, you can't hate on yourself when you were 2 years old because you were unconditioned. You were totally unconditioned. You were so innocent. So you can't hate that. But if you start loving that little child, you will realize that child just lives inside of you, and you start loving yourself. And you can be more present now. And that voice just gets lower. It's that. Not liking your own playing, it's the same thing. You don't feel worthy. You don't feel like you're good enough. It's the same thing. Start loving that inner child. Be in the present and express yourself. Practice, because you can imagine practicing in the present moment. It's so amazing. Like, listen, because first of all, you listen to music so intentively, so deeply, and you will be like, and then you will practice the stuff you really like, and you will absorb it so deeply because you're present. It's not a magical thing. It's just you're present. You're in the now. There's nothing else. It is the power of now. I'm so grateful for you watching all this way. And I appreciate the stillness and this moment that I had with you. You're so welcome to join my private community. I do private lessons. I have seminars about jazz guitar. You're so welcome to join. I look forward to seeing you in one way or another. If it's in my private community or in the next video, doesn't matter. Really grateful. Take care of yourself. Start being aware of that voice. Start telling your inner child that you love it, and you will start seeing much changes in your life. Maybe it's called many changes. You will see many changes in your life, and I look forward to that for you. So take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video. Guitar Man out. Bye bye.